Sanho Tree is director of the Drug Policy Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. He joins us live now from Washington. Good to have you with us, sir. Mencho, then. Sanho Tree is director of the Drug Policy Project at the Institute for Policy Studies. He joins us live now from Washington. Good to have you with us, sir. Mencho then led one of Mexico's most powerful and violent criminal organizations, as we've been hearing. Now, in practical terms, what happens next? Does his death weaken that cartel, or does it create a dangerous power vacuum?
One of the great ironies is that the only thing more dangerous than organized crime is disorganized crime. And so the Department of Homeland Security, as early as 2010, realized through an internal study that this kingpin strategy, the idea of going after cartel heads or top lieutenants, does not reduce the flow of drugs into the United States. It makes no measurable difference. What it does do, however, is increase violence, particularly within Mexico. And so it unleashes power struggles within the cartel for the underlings, who now get to move up a notch, and they're going to compete to see who is in control. And also by rival cartels who think, oh, they've been weakened now. This is our turn to take over their trafficking routes. And so there'll be some push to try to restore some kind of equilibrium if they allow these market forces to play out over time. But each time they come back and they beat the hornet's nest again. And so this, in large part, I think, was driven by the Trump administration, which wants to see action, and they're motivated by content creation in many ways. They want something they can tweet and go to the base and say, oh, look, we caught a kingpin, we did this, we did that. But the long-term consequences of this is more violence and not a reduced flow of drugs into the United States. So what was the achievement of all this? That's the question.
All right. There was once what some called a pax narcotica, an informal system that, however grim, imposed certain limits on these cartels. After President Calderon's war on them in 2006, that equilibrium collapsed, as we've seen in Mexico. Violence surged. You think it's likely to see that we'll see now another bloody phase, particularly for the local communities who are caught in the middle?
Yeah. But before the year 2000, there was kind of a long-running, unwritten Pax Narcotica, an unwritten code, an agreement between the Institutional Revolutionary Party that had monopoly on power in Mexico for decades, and the cartels along the border. And the agreement was something like this. You don't get involved in extortion, kidnapping, robberies, counterfeiting, all this other stuff. You stick to the quiet business of smuggling drugs. You don't kill lots of people, get involved in turf wars, and you bribe the correct officials within the party along the border areas. Once the PRI lost the monopoly on power, and you begin to see the beginnings of a turf battle brewing, President Calderon came in 2006, and it was kind of a Trumpian move. He said, I'm going to show these cartels, I'm going to throw 50,000 forces at this, mostly federal troops, to try to show them once and for all who's in charge. And that gets to the nature of the problem, right? The solutions to this problem are counterintuitive in nature. And what they did was, if Mexico's on fire with drugs and crime, the way to put it out is to throw water onto the fire. In this case, water being a metaphor for military and police forces. Well, if you think that's common sense, have you ever had a grease fire in your kitchen or an electrical fire? The last thing you want to do is throw water onto that fire because it'll cause it to explode. And that is the problem with drug prohibition.
Okay. All right. Going back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, from a U.S. perspective in terms of fentanyl flows, border security, bilateral cooperation, does this moment really represent an opportunity to disrupt trafficking networks? Or, as you were telling us, I think history suggests that supply chains will simply adapt and continue. Killing a kingpin doesn't necessarily solve the problem. It just rearranges it.
Yes, the problem is they're applying a war paradigm, a drug war, to a decentralized, distributed enemy that is operating for one objective: to make money. Right? It's not about conquering territory. It's not about political influence. It's about maximizing the profits. And so if you take out the cartel lieutenant or chief, it gives an opportunity for everyone else to make more money. So there is no cartel command. There is no high command of the international drug economy that says, finally, they've gotten too tough for us. Everyone stop using drugs. Growers stop growing. Traffickers stop trafficking. Everyone just put down whatever you're doing and stop. So we've been, for more than half a century, waging a war against an enemy who is quite literally incapable of an organized surrender. And so whatever doesn't destroy them only makes them angrier, and it gives them a perverse price support, if you will, a crop subsidy. We take worthless chemicals and agricultural commodities like marijuana, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamines, and we turn them into things that are astronomically more valuable for no good reason. These things cost pennies per dose to manufacture in the real world. That's why there's so much violence, and that's why this is so unending, is that people will chase those profits because we put the profits there.
Really good to talk to you again, sir. Many thanks indeed for being with us. Sanho Tree there in Washington.
Thank you.